if you're real, if you're genuine, if you got a good heart, if you're an advocate, and you just try to do the best for people. What's the old phrase? People will come. Build the dreams. People will come.
How can you transition from your working years to retirement with confidence and security? Today on Seek, Go, Create, we're exploring this critical life stage with Ryan Larson, founder and principal investment advisor at First Line Financial in Scottsdale, Arizona, just down the road from me as we're recording this. Specializing in the unique financial needs of retirees and transitioning boomers, which that's me, Ryan combines securities and insurance offerings with meticulous strategies designed to grow and preserve retirement assets. His approach not only safeguards against market fluctuations, but also optimizes tax efficiencies and minimizes fees. Join us as we delve into Ryan's missions to help his client achieve the American dream in their retirement years, ensuring they can lead the life they aspire to post-career. Ryan, welcome to Seek, Go, Create.
Thank you, Tim. This is a great opportunity. Really excited to be with you.
Yeah, and I think I shared with you before we hit record. I got my first question I'll ask in just a second, but we should have done this face to face. I'm recording this just, about an hour and a half north of you, and you're in Scottsdale. I'm up here in the Valley.
Yeah, I would say, at about an hour. I take that commute a lot when I'm going to the mountains. That's kind of my place to get my sanity back, but I'm very familiar where you're at right now.
Yeah, we're spending about a month here as we're migrating north. And we went to Sedona and Cottonwood this last weekend. And anyway, what a great area up here. Anyway, it's beautiful. We're enjoying it. But before we get started, if you and I were to bump into each other or just out and about, and I ask you what you do, what do you tell people when they ask you what you do?
Yeah, it's interesting because 20 years ago, I would say I'm a fireman for the city of Phoenix. Now you fast forward 23 years later, that's how much time I have with the city of Phoenix as a firefighter. Now I would say, well, I started my journey as a firefighter and I transitioned into the financial field, and I'm juggling both, surprisingly. And people would say, well, how are you doing that? Well, time, right? Time is one of the precious things that we have, and I just try to allocate my time as best as possible. I'm raising a family, which is very important to me. So it is sometimes a juggle to focus your time on each priority, because I think obviously being a firefighter, being an advocate for those people that you serve, is you need to focus on that. You need to make sure that you're getting good sleep, eating healthy, making sure that you're in that ready phase at all times. But then also with the financial business that I'm running, you need to make sure that, once again, you're getting enough sleep and you're looking at markets and seeing what's kind of coming down the pipeline. And just when you go home, that's when you definitely have to step into those dad shoes, and being tired, being worn out, being potentially upset because something didn't go right in my day. That's not allowed. I think that's kind of how I would share my story if we were to bump into each other.
So firefighter, financial guy, family. It's a lot. That is a lot going on there. Yeah, I just read your book, Ladder to Leader. I think I started last night. I think your wife Kate sent me the copy, and I went, "Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know." At first, I didn't know you had a book, so I read all that. But man, I enjoyed it. Enjoyed your story. And,
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
and
Thank you
stuff
for
like
reading
that.
it.
Yeah, what a cool background. But I guess just kind of kick off by saying, you mentioned time, you mentioned rest and sleep, but a lot of people, they struggle with just kind of doing one thing. You've got two big things, not even bringing the family into it, because I know your kids are younger and stuff like that. But
Yes.
I mean, you got firefighter, you've got, I'll use the term fiduciary. We'll define it later, by the way. But I love that word, fiduciary. So you're a fiduciary representative, financial representative. what's the biggest challenge with juggling those 2? Just anything that comes to mind that, you go, "Ooh, those 2 things conflict."
They're polar opposites. So I guess that is one thing that I kind of struggle with sometimes is finding that identity of who I am. When you're coming out of high school, you're moving into those college years, you're looking for who you are going to be, right? Or who you desire to be. And coming out of high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my mom had a very impactful path by introducing the fire department to me, which I pursued with a relentless work ethic, and I accomplished that goal. But I would say it's sometimes a struggle to take this fire department role and this fiduciary role, like you described it, and kind of merge them together. But at the end of the day, what I would say is just being an advocate, those are very good similarities between the two. The conflict is it's definitely polar opposites, but there is one thing that ties it together, and that's just being an advocate for either the patients that I run on with the fire department or for the clients that I visit with in my office. So hopefully that helps kind of bring the two together.
Yeah, it does, because I was gonna follow up that question with how do they conflict, and then also how do they complement?
Yeah.
Because I've always been fascinated with the schedule of firefighters, first responders, but primarily firefighters, because I think police and other emergency responders have sort of different schedules based on kind of just my outsider knowledge. Tell me a little bit about because some people are just sitting here going, "How in the world can you mentally or physically do those 2?" But the schedule is extremely unique for firefighters. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we definitely have a very interesting schedule, but it's a flexible schedule. I think if you have friends or family who are, in that public safety field, usually they have some type of side hustle. But our schedule, we work 24 hours on and then we get 48 hours off. Within the Phoenix Fire Department organization, you're probably aware, Tim, that you're seeing this probably just as you're commuting when in Arizona right now. It's just like there's a lot of traffic here and there's a lot of people who are coming to the valley. And so as a firefighter in this organization, you're running a lot more calls. There's some stations that are running 20 to 25 calls a shift. And if that's a 24-hour shift, you spread that out, first thing you're going in the morning, and then you're starting to run calls all the way after midnight when people are sleeping. And it definitely takes its toll. But those 48 hours allows you to, that first part of that first day off, get some sleep if you have to, right? Get the kids off to school or whatever you have to do in the morning just to kind of settle your life down for a little bit. Maybe take a little bit of a nap, and then you're up and at 'em and you're starting to move again. And now you have another day to kind of prioritize what you want to do, spend it with family, work, whatever you enjoy out there. So that's kind of what I do is I see myself going in, once again, going back to my health, fitness. It's all important because if I'm running those calls, I need to be mentally sharp when I come into that financial arena the next day, trying to get as much sleep as I can and just staying focused on my end goal, which is providing for my family.
The odd thing about that is I've heard you in our short period we've been talking, you're talking about sleep and rest, and I am becoming more keenly aware of how critical that is for my well-being. When I was
Yes.
probably in my late 20s, 30s, I don't think I gave a rip about how much sleep I've got, and I used to
Yeah, I'm with you.
boast I used to boast that I might live off 3 to 4 hours. I think during the '90s, I think I had a corporate gig and a side hustle, and I used to now I'm like, I'm pretty focused on how much rest I'm getting, the consistency of rest, and things like that. And I guess that's one thing that I want to follow up as a question because my wife jokes with me all the time. She goes, "You're kind of a creature of habit. Like if she gets up in the morning before I do, I sometimes can be a little bit uh, not grouchy, but it's like, oh man, it threw my schedule off." To me, it seems like with that 24 on, 48 off, kind of that 24 on could be 24 on, or it could be 24 where y'all are prepping, but you're hanging out. That may
Yeah.
not be a good way of saying it. What does that do for for your rhythms, for your consistency, for you've mentioned rest a few times, for your sleep patterns and different things like that? And I'm just curious about it. We don't have to pick it apart totally, but what does that do for you?
Yeah, that's a good point. Luckily, being, I guess, a senior member now of the Phoenix Fire Department, I kind of have my choice of the stations that I want to go to. And so I have chosen to go to a slower station. I, I'm going to throw that out very loosely right now because once again, the population coming into Arizona is just crazy. So we are seeing a big tick up in our call volume. But I work in a part of the valley, which is called Paradise Valley. It's a very, very pretty area. I'm not sure if you're aware of that area, Tim, but it's definitely more slow tempo. However, we're getting pulled into different cities now, so our call volume is going up just because they need outlining cities need help. When I come in, yeah, I definitely try to find that tempo. I come in, I work out fairly quickly, check out the truck, work out, and that puts me in a good mindset right there. But then I do the good old cold plunge. And that just, if I was tired, if I was like a little lethargic from working the day before on the financial side, because sometimes that takes quite a bit of energy as well. You're looking at markets, you're seeing what kind of different asset classes are performing well, or what is going to kind of be that next shiny object out there that investors are going to want to pursue. And so that does take a lot of energy. So coming into the fire station, I try to revamp myself as fast as I can, doing that cold plunge. And then after that, I'm going in. I'm going to back up. After that cold plunge, I'm going out. I'm going into the sun. I'm stretching. I'm using that sun's energy to kind of get me going again. I'm not the tannest guy, but I'm in the sun because I think that is a very healthy component of our life. And so after I do the cold plunge and then the stretching and with my shirt off in the sun, I'm feeling really good, Tim. And then I just take that energy, that level, I bring it back into the station, and then I spend time with my crew. I connect with them. But if there's not much going on, if there's not a lot of calls, I am definitely moving into my room, refocusing on my business, which is the financial business, and using that, I guess, organization to continue my pursuit as becoming a well-rounded individual.
And in a little while, as we move into talking about some of the financial responsibilities, I want to maybe draw some comparisons between the two. But one of the things that we really love doing here, Ryan, is we really like to pick apart how people define success, how success comes about. And in my theory is that most of our culture, many of the things we do in culture, especially our first world Americanized culture, people haven't taken time to really define what success is. One of the things I loved about reading through your story is that it appears as if, and if I'm reading something into it, I don't think I am, it appears as if you struggled with what success was for a good portion of the early part of your life. And we could talk a little bit about that because I think it's what led you into being a firefighter. And we're really big on journey here. It's like there's
Yeah.
seasons people go through and things like that. But what can you share about it? I've just read it, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. But what can you share about how you define success, if you even had a grasp of it early on growing up? Because there's just hints of struggle throughout. that story as I read it.
Yeah, there definitely has been some struggle throughout my journey. I think there's struggle just out there with everyone. And I was hesitant about opening up my story to the public. And you don't know how people are going to take it. But what I'm learning more, I just started going to church a lot more and kind of opening up my faith and kind of turning to God, because my journey is still a struggle. Nothing is ever is everything is good sometimes, but sometimes you go through this black cloud, if you will. And so what I will say is, growing up, I got into a lot of fights. I used kind of these as kind of resolution tools, which was not appropriate at all. And I don't think it took me in the right direction. But what I had going for me is just a good family foundation, which they did not want to see me fail. My mom and dad were very good stewards of just making sure that I kept my focus on something pure. And one of those, well, just being an athlete, doing football and baseball, wrestling, that obviously took my focus and narrowed it. And I just tried to, when I would start getting lost, whether it's running with the wrong crowd, getting into fights, doing drugs, whatever it was, I found that I could always come back to my athletic abilities and that would define ultimately my success at that point. But now, as I kind of get older, I'm 46 and I'm kind of maturing. Success for me, it's still a struggle to define. And being a firefighter it's a very impactful job. And as I'm closing out my journey with that kind of organization, I'm looking at what I did within that organization. And I was like, was I successful? Did I accomplish my goals? And I would say getting hired was just one of the biggest accomplishments of my career. It's a very competitive job. I think I was competing against potentially 6,000 to 7,000 people for a handful of jobs back 20 years ago. I was not the smartest kid, definitely did not get good grades. But what I found is, when I saw something that I wanted to pursue, I pursued it with just a relentless work ethic. And I don't think I've ever once started something that I didn't finish. And I don't know why that is. I think I'm looking for that success, because if I don't complete it, then I feel like, oh, my life's not worth it, or I wasn't worth it internal. But now, tripping, failing, that's a part of life. And I think when you lose, those are some of the best moments in people's lives, because you get to identify what went wrong. You get to kind of like self-reflect. I didn't like losing, but when I lost, it just made me a better winner at the end of the day. So hopefully that was a little.
It is, yeah. Do you think this is something, again, I read through your book fairly quickly, and this is not me being a analysis and analyzing anything, but
Yeah.
at times I was sitting here saying, because you mentioned that you weren't the best student. I think you were a great athlete, but maybe you also weren't 6'3", 220 pounds, maybe short. It's almost like, to me, that Ryan is a guy early on in his career that had something to prove, had a chip on his shoulder a little bit. I don't know if that's correct or not. It seemed like that,
It is.
because maybe he
Yeah.
didn't fit in with
100%.
maybe he didn't fit in with what, the high school, the structures, the systems defined as success. Anyway, and was there, I mean, any learning disabilities or anything like that? I mean, I don't, you mentioned it was tough, but, um, any of the, I mean, we've interviewed emergency room surgeons that have had dyslexia, and it's just fascinating them talking about that. But talk a little bit about, did you have a chip on your shoulder?
I did I did have a chip on my shoulder, but also too, yes, I struggled in school. So I was in resource and I didn't even know what that meant. What is resource? Well, it's just you're not keeping pace with the rest of the class. So when I was in elementary, we would all start opening up the books, and then I would have another separate teacher come and get me, and I would go to this special classroom. And everyone would say, "Well, where's Ryan going?" And so I would always think like, "Oh, are they talking about me? Are they saying, "Oh, he's stupid"?" Or so I think that was the start of my chip, and I think it's definitely kind of like stayed with me into my high school days because yeah, I never thought I always thought I was different. And I didn't want to be a part of the herd. I always want to be going against the herd or going against the grain. And I think that's what has made me successful in today's society is because every time that someone has told me I would listen, but I would push back and I would say, okay, well, I don't want to do it this way. I'm going to do it this way. And so I would find myself pivoting a lot. And I don't know if it was because I was isolated when I was younger in resource and it made me think differently, or I just looked at all the friends that I had that were in different social classes and I was like, I don't really want to be a part of that one today. I want to be part of this one. And so I was always picking and choosing where I want to go. And I think that has made me a very successful man because if something doesn't feel good, if it doesn't sit right, and if someone is definitely trying to tell me, oh, this is the right way, I'm going to say, well, maybe that's your way. That's not Ryan Larson's way. And I'm going to pursue my own path. And I'm going to do what I feel right for me and what my DNA is, how I operate.
Yeah, life has a tendency to alter and change sometimes our thought processes or how we define things. And when reading through your book, I'm going, okay, this is a guy that's seems to have come to terms with some of those things. So the question I've got is, do you still have a chip on your shoulder? You still trying to prove something? You seem peaceful and relaxed to me, but is there something underneath that peaceful demeanor that there's still kind of a drive? And I will tell you, it's a bit of a trick question. I'll go ahead and warn you.
Yeah.
This is a trick
Yeah.
question because based on how you respond, I might go in different directions.
Yeah. I love it. No, it's good. And I love where this is going, this conversation, because I am still learning who Ryan is. I want to be more on the vulnerable side within this podcast. And I've had struggles my whole life. I just started going to see a therapist and, because everything that we see within the fire department, that's a struggle in itself. And then I had stuff that I was going on internally with the family. And so I'm always learning like who Ryan is. But what I have found, and it has made me, I guess, more at peace, like you said, Tim, is the counseling wasn't working. And I just, like what I just shared with you, when someone's saying, oh, you got to do this, everyone's like, hey, maybe you got to go sit down with a counselor, Well, I did that. Didn't resonate, didn't feel good to me. But my wife, she's was raised Catholic and she's been brought up in the church. And she said, well, when you're ready, God is always accepting, right? And so I turned to God. I was looking for a higher power to get me through some of these struggles that I was having. And to answer your question is, I don't believe I have a chip on my shoulder anymore. I'm learning to be at peace because I know that there's only one person who I'm going to answer to at the end of the day. And if I show up on his doorstep and I have this bad attitude, and he's obviously going to forgive me, but I want to come to him with an open heart, without any, I don't want to be sinful like I used to be in my younger days. And I want to go to him with an open heart. And what makes me successful today is pursuing what I'm passionate about, but accomplishing those things. That is success for me. But the ultimate success for me is just raising my family properly, raising my little girl, my little boy in the best way that I can, trying to take after my dad in some manners, and others not so much, right? But trying to find that rhythm as being the type of man that I want my son to look up to, and I want to give him the characteristics and the traits that I got from my dad, and I've evolved, and now I'm passing those on to him, and trying to kind of keep that, I guess, that bloodline, just keep moving forward. But ultimately, the success that I have is what I do on this earth, and to help my kids become good members of society.
That's good. That goes back, you mentioned the word identity earlier, and I think part of our, I don't want to say struggle, but our journey, our walk here on this earth is to come to terms with our identity. And I'll say it even a different way. You brought up the spiritual. It's like, what are we created for? What are we here for? And I'm gonna do a shameless plug here for a novel for you. And
Yeah.
it's written by me, and it relates to all that we've talked about. So, and if you need me to send you a copy, whatever, or get it to you, it's Coach. The name of it is Coach, A Story of Success Redefined, and it addresses all of these topics. And it's one of the reasons why I love reading your book, because yours is an actual story. Mine's a novel. There's a lot of me in it, but it's all about this and that identity piece and that journey that we're on. And so, anyway, very cool. I love it having these type conversations, because I believe they create a foundation when we start talking about how a lot of people measure success, which is financial.
Yeah.
And you could probably tell that, see, my journey was slightly different. Uh, I think I did well through high school years, college, and all that, but I had an addiction that I was addicted to. It was either more or tomorrow. I can't decide which one I was addicted to. And so I was always
Yeah.
pursuing and shooting for more. There's one thing that I want to say we've got a great deal in common here, and we might could talk about this. There was a movie that somewhat defined me, and you said it defined you, and that was Gordon Gekko and
Yeah.
Wall Street. And
Yeah.
the phrase "greed is good" would have been one of my foundational principles as I was coming along. But for
Mm.
you, it was more, you loved what was going on the trade floor, correct? I mean, is that what you
Yeah.
loved about that
Yeah.
movie? See, I love the greed, man.
Interesting. Yeah. I love what was going on with the trade desk, the trade floor, and how everything was like shaking and baking. I was really intrigued with that. And I was like, is that really how it is? And yeah, I started pursuing that probably 8 years into the fire department. And I had the opportunity, I started off in like foreign currency. So I was doing pretty well on that. And I caught the attention of an advisor who was actually managing my fire departments. We have a 457 and 401A account. Those are types of retirement accounts for the listeners who aren't aware. But he was managing those accounts for me. And 2008 came around. I was doing very well with the foreign currency, bought $1 million condo. I was like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm living it. And then 2008 happens and completely shuts down like everything that I was doing. I was nervous to trade because the $1 million condo is not $1 million, financial crisis. I mean, So I sat down with him and said, hey, what do I do with my money? And I started to share my story. And he's like, well, why don't you come to work for me? And I pursued getting my Series 7 and my 66. And that just allows me to manage retirement accounts. But yeah, ultimately, I had the opportunity to go on the NASDAQ floor in New York. And it was everything I imagined it. It was really, really cool seeing what I kind of always dreamt about, watching Wall Street, and now being there with my wife, looking at all these traders and trade desks and how everything's being executed at the best price. It was definitely amazing. It was a really cool journey to get there. But yes, on that movie, I would say that was one of the things that I wanted to always pursue and try to accomplish one day, is just to get on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
When's the last time you saw that movie? It's been a long time for me. I wonder if it still holds up. That was like 87 or something.
I think you're right. Yeah, yeah, I know I wasn't that old when I first watched it, but I was like, oh, this is awesome. But I would.
It was right before I was about to be married, so I was just coming out of Georgia Tech. And man,
Okay.
I loved the slick back hair and the
Oh yeah.
suits
Oh
and,
yeah.
the office. I mean, it kind of showed to me a bit of superficialness of what I thought success was at the time, but it's part of my journey. And also, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be curious if it holds up. When's the last time you saw it?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, now that I've been running this business I've been in the financial industry for 15 plus years now. And I think I started First Line Financial, which is a registered investment advisory firm that I own. I'm the
Mhm.
founder with him, and I have Kate, who's helped me in this business venture. Yeah, I don't really. It's completely different, Tim. It's just like I sometimes like to just meet clients just like this, or I started off in that suit and tie and slip back hair and all that good stuff. But you know what? What I found is if you're real, if you're genuine, if you got a good heart, if you're an advocate, and you just try to do the best for people, what's the old phrase? People will come. Build the dreams. People will come. And they continue to come. And it's just because I'm living that message. I'm not pushing it on society of like, oh, I'm this fiduciary. I'm just having that mindset is like, if I'm a good person, I'm going to share my stories. And once everyone hears the story, they can make their own decision. If I'm the right guy, if I'm the wrong guy, and I'm not always going to be the right guy for the job, just based on people's interaction, right? But what I will say is I'm the most qualified for the job. And the reason for that is, yes, I am a fiduciary. So that's first and foremost. But also too, I am doing things that is not being done out there right now. And one of the things, one of the companies that I just started is a real estate company, but I started a real estate fund. And so what this allows individuals to do, Tim, is to not just focus on stocks, bonds, mutual funds, because I think that is just part of the equation. I think what makes a truly diversified portfolio or how you can get ahead faster is by merging those two asset classes together, right? In a perfectly balanced financial plan for some. Because obviously we all know real estate has done very well. Stock market has been a little shaky, especially right now with everything that's going on in the Middle East and Russia, Ukraine. But there's always opportunity within real estate. And it's just got to buy at the right time. You got to know people. They said it, one person said it best, is like real estate is an insider game. If you try to do insider trading in the financial side, you're going to get slapped. You might go to jail. But insider trading is allowed within real estate. And so when I thought about that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that totally makes sense. So I know I'm a little bit long-winded, but I think this is a good message for people who are looking into how to create wealth and build wealth, is you need a good balance of both. Don't just continue to put all your dollars into that 401k or that IRA and hope that it's going to continue to go up, because our world is it's a little bit mixed up right now. And if we just have that long-term approach works, like, don't get me wrong, but you're going to need to stomach 20% losses, 30% losses. And you can recover for that if you have time. But if you introduce other vehicles, that is a recipe for success. When something doesn't do well, another asset class is doing well for you, and it's more predictable and cash flowing, if you will.
Yeah, there used to be, there may still be some that promote something that's called a balanced portfolio, 60/40, or,
Yeah.
or 60/20/20, just various things,
Yeah.
and all of that. And you just kind of alluded to it briefly, that it's stocks and bonds, and a lot of people would say nothing else. And I am one, I have to be careful, and I don't know if this is just my nature, but I love alternatives. I love asymmetric type things. I love
Yes.
some of the things, and I don't think this is gonna be a time where we're gonna go off talking about it, but you brought up real estate. We had a real estate company. You mentioned one condo that you had. I am very convinced that we bought a handful of condos, and the date that we closed was the absolute peak of the market in 2008.
Mm, hmm.
I am
Yeah.
convinced of that. And a
Yes.
lot of our story is the changes and all that occurred after that. But I'm sure that that's been part of a a a journey for you. So I guess maybe before we dive into a few things as we finish up here, maybe with some specifics, or I know you can't give advice, but with some things maybe of next steps for people to do. Talk a little bit about, you alluded to it briefly, that we've had some changes. At the end of the book, you're talking about COVID, which that was that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Some would say we're through it. I think we're through that event. I think we're going to be seeing much more cyclical type things. But talk let's use that word balance for a beginning point here. What do you look at as far as a and I'm using air quotes for those listening that might be watching the video, of a balanced portfolio in general? We're not talking specific, everybody's got a different story. But in general, what is Ryan at 46 years old and 15 plus years experience in the financial arena? Look at it balanced in. We're recording this in 2004. I think it'll give us some good conversations for the next few minutes.
Yeah. This might shock a lot of people, especially with what I do. But once again, I'm a very transparent guy, and what I say right now could change tomorrow, right? And so what I'll do is I'll just position like what I'm doing. I'm being very cautious in my approach right now, and the reason is just because there's a lot of noise out there. And so at 46, I have raised more cash in my portfolio. I am not long the markets right now. I'm inner day or inner week. I would say inner week. If things start moving the right direction, then I might use that cash to buy into a portfolio of not overweight equities, because equities bring risk. So I would say I have that balance, right, where I'm introducing more of that fixed income. I don't really like bonds, but you have pretty decent rates just in money market accounts, 5%, 4%. So don't, I guess, don't point your nose up in the air when you're getting 4% in a market like this, because what that allows you to do is if things do happen, it's easy to pull your money out or put it in to the market, so you can be more flexible. So that's kind of my approach. I'm holding more cash. I'm not long equities. I'm an inner-week trader, and I'm introducing more alternatives, like you said, Tim. I'm introducing more real estate, using more self-directed IRA investment vehicles to continue moving that train down the track, if you will.
But Ryan, inflation is almost depend. I don't know how you measure inflation. My wife and I went to the local grocery here. I don't go to the grocery store that often, so I'm
I
maybe
don't
a
either,
little
Tim.
out of touch. I mean, I read some stuff, but we got 4 items. It was like $41, a couple of frozen cauliflower pizzas and
Yep.
and I'm like going, "Good gracious." I said, "We don't I mean, we could carry it out in one hand." And she goes, "Oh yeah, this stuff's eating." I guess that's a factor, right? Inflation.
It is. But what else is a factor, Tim, is if you have your money in the market because you're listening to other advisors saying, oh, if you put your money in cash, you're losing out to inflation. Well, did the financial advisor, that fiduciary, tell you, well, what happens when your money takes a 20 to 30% hit? I don't care about losing out from what, let's just say inflation is 6%. I didn't look at the latest numbers, but let's say it's 6%. Well, if I'm getting 5 on a money market account, I'm losing 1. Okay, I'm okay with losing 1, but I'm not okay if we go to war with Middle East, or if someone bombs NATO and losing 30, 40, 50% like potentially we did in 2008, 2017, 2020, that 2022. So you got to weigh the good with the bad. That's what makes me different. Is I'm a free thinker. Like, I'm not trying to push you in one direction. I'm trying to say, let's look at this situation together and let's make the best decision based on maybe what your gut is telling you, what my experience is telling me, and then let's put a plan together and let's introduce things that are not being talked about with other financial firms out there.
I'm a systems guy. I like systems, and I saw something briefly. I think your wrap is
Hmm.
the system that you use. Tell me more about that
Yep.
and what that is. Just give a brief overview of that so that we
Yeah,
understand this, because that's the foundation of your system, correct?
it is. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, it's called the WRAP. We got it trademarked, and it's called the Written Retirement Action Plan. So it's just a process that we take with every client that we bring on, and essentially it's a written document that is proprietary to First Line Financial that we put together after sitting with our clients and determining what will fit their needs. So that is essentially like the playbook of their retirement future. But once again, just like every playbook, pages need to be replaced and put back in and changed a lot. It's a ever evolving process, if you will.
Yeah. What is it like when you have someone? I'm 60 years old, and this is not asking for personal advice while we're recording that's going to go out to the world either, by the way. But what is it like when you're now dealing with people? We mentioned that you deal with a lot of boomers. Obviously, I believe that I'm the tail end of the boomer generation, I think, if depending on how someone measures it. But as that generation, we saw the little blip in 87, 88, when there was an adjustment. We saw the 2000. Those, to me, were fairly small relative to what happened in '08. And then, some of us are still scratching our heads going, we're not really totally sure what happened with this worldwide pandemic and things like that. You mentioned you're a free thinker. We won't go down those roads, but we do kind of ask questions just like, man, things seem to be kind of whiplashing stronger than they have in the past. With your wrap, with that system, what are you doing? Maybe in general, I don't know if it's general. I know you can't get into specifics, but maybe the alternatives is one of the answers. But what are you doing with people that are seeing large swings at possibly critical times, in
Mhm. Yeah.
what they look at their lives? I don't even know if that I posed that question, but maybe just take it and go wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, I see where you're going. It's again just looking at vehicles that are not the traditional stocks, bonds, mutual fund. That 60/40, 70/30 portfolio, I've always struggled with that, Tim. I really have, and I push back on it, but I have found a lot of success. Once again, when I push back on things, I find success in other ways. So with that being said, I'm going to continue to push back on that 60/40 model. I'm going to look at other things, ideas, ways that we can kind of insulate people's life savings. Life savings. If you're in that pre-retiree or retirement age and your money's in the market, that's a head scratcher for me. There are ways that you can continue to get really, really nice cash flow without any of the volatility. And so, yeah, that's how I would position that question. Just looking at more predictable cash flowing vehicles that are not correlated to the stock market.
I do find myself pursuing, and I don't know your thoughts on these alternatives that are highly divisive in our world. Like if you mention to someone precious metals, or if you mention to someone crypto or Bitcoin, something in that phrase, or if you mention things like I love the investment of real estate, even with my history. I love
Yeah,
I
yeah,
and
yeah,
yours too, right? I mean, it's like
yeah. Mine
I
too.
I do think that real estate is and some of the alternatives I love now there's ways to position yourself to be early stage investors in
Hmm.
businesses, similar to what it used to be with some of the we'll call them the big boys. Some of us didn't have access to that. And I like investing small amounts in 10 companies, knowing that 8 of them probably won't exist. And those have done very well in helping me do what I would call maybe catching up after
Good,
going
good.
through
Yeah.
some challenges. Any thoughts or responses to those if I bring those up? I didn't see your head spin or green stuff come out of your mouth when I mentioned a few of those.
Yeah, no, those are yeah, private companies. Obviously, they're good opportunities, and but what I will say is you got pros and you got cons, right? So those are usually less liquid. They are going to take longer to kind of come to fruition to see potentially like a return on your investment. So if you're in that, if your comfort level is someone who could withstand having your money locked up for a while, potentially losing it all, that's going to be a trade-off for individuals. But do I do that? 100%. I look at these smaller companies, up and comers. Am I putting all my eggs in one basket? Nope, not a chance. So yeah, this just we're literally it's just we're baking a really nice meal. We're using different ingredients. There's there's a big recipe to follow for individuals out there today, and that's why I would say to employ these fiduciaries, put them kind of in the hot seat, but fly that plane together, right? I mean, really take a proactive approach because this is your life savings, and there are people who will take advantage of the situation sometimes for their best interest and not yours. And I've seen it time and time again. So make sure that you're working with a trusted advisor, a trusted financial firm, and hopefully that they're showcasing really the breadth of what they can do besides, hey, we could put your money into Apple or Tesla or Microsoft.
Yeah, these people that get the fees. I like that word fiduciary that you use, because it's not a word that's common in most people's vocabulary, but it speaks so much of a steward, of someone who is an overseer, someone who has gained some wisdom and knowledge in areas, and they're sharing that and partnering. I love that term, fiduciary. Anything else you want to say about that word? Since it is sort of, I was almost wondering if, when I asked you what you do earlier, if you were going to say I'm a fiduciary.
The buzzword. Yeah, no, I think just not saying it, but living it, I think is a better way to go about that, right? Because it is a buzzword, and you'll hear that in the financial industry a lot. And I'm a little burned out on it, honestly, because I hear it talked about so much. So I try to live it. I share stories to bring that fiduciary to life. And I kind of say, hey, I go into people's houses at the worst moment of their life. We take care of them. We treat them with the best possible care that we have. We get them to the hospital as fast as we can. We nurture and console the family. And if that's not a fiduciary, I don't know what is. So
one thing in this whole financial arena, this is getting close to my final question. One thing in the I think a lot of people look for home runs. They look for swinging for the fences and not the day-to-day prep. One of the things that I think, and this will maybe tie back to some things we talked about earlier. A lot of people look at firefighters, first responders, and they only think about the 9/11, the event, the event that they hear about, that those situations you just talked about. But it's kind of one of the reasons I asked about the rhythm earlier, because I think it relates here, and maybe this will be my final question. And that is, all of the downtime, all of the prep time, all of the time that's outside of, because if you just showed up and said, hey, I'm a firefighter, and just let me know when it's time to go fight a fire, what would that be like? I think a lot of people approach their financial world that way. Can you tie those two together here as we finish up? And I may have another question or two. Am I relating things that shouldn't relate? But it seems to me like that's what you've done.
yeah, I think what you're saying is just being ready as possible, right? To respond to that alarm, to respond to that fire, to respond to that medical emergency. So being prepared and staying in that present moment, having that mindset of like, okay, I could be looking at my phone or watching TV, but in a blink of an eye, I could be once again pulling someone's child out of a pool, and it's game time. And I think using that kind of analogy within in the financial industry, just being prepared, staying present, staying up on your training, or staying up on news events is going to get you ahead. It just will. And those home runs, they don't last. They don't last that long. You might hit one, you might hit maybe two your whole lifetime. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of clients come through the door. And I have seen a few home runs, but usually those home runs have been passed down from generation to generation, right? It's a legacy asset, if you will. So if those positions, if you could hold them for a very, very long time and you're just going to pass them on to your kid, that is a true definition of a home run. Do you see huge home runs in today's markets? You might, but you're going to see more stories of, well, I swung for the fences and I struck out more than you do, hey, I hit that ball 100 yards over the park
I love
or
the
the fence.
long-term thinking aspect of that because it's when you were talking about home runs, I was thinking I haven't looked at anything. I'm getting to where I look at less news. That's just for my mental state. But
Yeah,
I think yesterday, as the time of recording this, Tesla stock had dropped blank, I don't know, percentage. So a few years ago, home run. Today, they're laying off 10% of their workforce and struggling. I'm not, so I, they'll probably be around. I'm not kicking, throwing them in the grave or anything like that. However, it shows the ebbs and flows and the reason for the need for
100%.
long term. Ryan, is there anything that before I just finish up with a few things, anything that you wish I'd brought up or asked about, or anything that you just want to leave us with that I may have missed? Because I love digging into the story and all that, but I know we didn't cover a lot of the financial stuff. But anything else you want to say before we finish up?
No, I think we covered a great deal, and I would just say for the listeners that have faith, right? I'm just going to keep coming to this faith component of the conversation. Have faith in what you're doing is the right thing for you. God gives us these powers, and we all have special gifts, and just have faith that tomorrow is going to turn out. Things are going to work out well for you and all your endeavors. And so if you could just keep that mindset, and I know we all go through these tough times, but if you could just manifest and stay on that journey, if it makes you happy, stay in that journey, you will find success. And that definition is going to be, once again, different from person to person, but my success is just spending more time with my family, running successful businesses, providing value to my clients, and we all win together. That's my true definition of success.
Very good. Love that. Love that, Ryan. I appreciate that. Where can people connect, find you, either just reach out or engage, whatever that looks like? Give all those items. And then I've got one more question before we finish up.
Yeah, your listeners could just go to firstlinefin.com to kind of see our company, First Line Financial. There's opportunities to schedule something online to sit down, have a deeper conversation on what your situation looks like, if that's what you feel that you want to do. Or you could just reach out to Ryan at firstlinefin.com. And I would say any listeners out there who want to just send me a quick email, just let me know where they're at in their journey in life. What I'll do is I'll respond as quick as I can, and I'll send a book out in the mail, and just in support of all your listeners for no cost. So just I want to share my message and hear other people's journeys and stories as well.
Very good. I like that. Appreciate you doing that. Ryan, we are Seek, Go Create. Those three words. I'm going to allow you to choose one of those words over the other two as my final question. And why? Seek, go, or create?
I would say I would lean on create. And I've always loved to create things. And it's just right now I continue to create these companies from nothing. So I really like putting something together and creating a company that could bring really good people together. And once again, we're all kind of leveling up together.
Very good. Ryan Larson, I appreciate the conversation. I enjoy the humility. I enjoy the just transparency. And I think it's really cool to talk to someone who is a firefighter and a fiduciary. That is just, that is a really, really cool combination. And so I appreciate that. I encourage you, if you're listening in, to go just connect with Ryan, reach out to him, just ask a few questions. And I can tell that his mindset is he'll reach out and communicate. So make sure you do that. We are Seek, Go, Create. We have new episodes every Monday. And make sure you subscribe and leave reviews. We're every Monday morning on YouTube and your favorite platform. And we appreciate you joining us here. Until next time, continue being all that you were created to be.